today during our lunchtime webinar. As folks are kind of getting settled, I'm going to pass it off to Emily, one of our technical assistance providers, who's going to run us through a couple of polls so that we can see who all is in the Zoom room today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leanne. Okay, yeah. So we're just doing some quick polls just to kind of get an idea of who's here. So this first one, we're just wondering who you represent. So that's an MPO, school district, city, tribal government, or other. Just go ahead and fill that out and give people a few seconds here to do that. Oh, see a lot of people from the cities. Awesome.
School districts are catching up. It's kind of fun to watch it as people fill it out.
Is, yeah, real-time updates. Awesome. All right, give people a few more seconds here. If you're just joining, we're asking people just to let us know who you represent: school districts, MPOs or counties, city, tribal government, other. All right, okay, and I'll end it right there. So it looks like we have a lot of people who are representing cities today, so that is super cool. She'll share those results with you all. All right. Then we're going to open our next question, which is, how likely are you to apply for Safe Routes to School support? And this is funding or technical assistance. We just want to get an idea of who's interested in applying. Oh yeah, quite a lot of people are interested. That's great. Awesome.
Hey there, Sarah. Sorry I'm late.
No problem. We're doing a couple of polls to get people oriented. Welcome to the Safe Routes to School webinar.
Thank you.
All right, give people about 5 more seconds here. All right, share those results. Yep, it looks like a lot of you are planning on applying, and quite a few more are interested in learning more. So you're in the right place if that's what you're wanting to do. All right, and then finally for our last poll, we just want to get an idea of which grants or which grant or grants you're interested in applying for. So go ahead and we'll give people a few seconds to do that. While I'm talking, I also wanted to let everyone know of a few events that are coming up for Oregon Safe Routes, things that you could use your grant funding to get involved with. So we have a winter walk to school day that is coming up on February 23rd. This is a day that we're encouraging students around Oregon to get out and walk. It's not just a spring or fall activity. It's not just a nice weather activity. You can go out and see the beautiful landscapes of Oregon all season round. So keep an eye out for that. You can find more information at our website at OregonSafeRoutes.org/winter-walk. We also have an Earth Month event coming up too. And we'll be sharing more information about that. So again, these are just fun things that we do as the technical assistance team and things that you'll be able to learn a lot more about. So, oh, thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing that. All right, I'm going to end this poll and let's see what people are interested in. Oh, it's quite a nice split, actually. That's great. A lot of construction interest, a lot of education interest, and you're going to be learning all about these today. Awesome. And with that, I'm going to send it back over to Leanne. Thank you all so much for participating in the polls.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily. Again, my name is Leanne Ferguson. I work for Oregon Department of Transportation, and I'm here with my colleague, Heidi Manlove. Heidi, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Sure. I'm Heidi Manlove. I work with the lovely Leanne. Together we share this program. I work on the education side, so teaching kids and communities about safe walking and rolling, education materials, doing education events such as the walk and roll or winter walk to school day events.
Great. Well, we want to welcome you all to the Safe Routes to School webinar. We're going to be talking today all about the grant opportunities coming up starting on February 1st. I will start a presentation and share my screen to get us going. Okay, so I can see a couple of people's faces. Can you nod if you're looking at my screen? Like you can see it. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So today we're talking about the Safe Routes to School program. Last year we had this, or the last time we had a round of funding available, we did our webinar on May 4th, and I had a bunch of Star Wars trivia interspersed throughout the presentation. And since we're not doing that this year, but I really like jokes, I'm going to start the the webinar off with a joke that I'll have the answer to at the end of the webinar. And if you have any transportation themed jokes that you want to throw into the chat, I always appreciate those. So this is a transportation themed joke, and it is, what is Harry Potter's preferred mode of transportation? So if you think you know the answer, you can put it in the chat, or if you have any other weird safe routes, transportation jokes, you can put them in the chat just to get us started at lunchtime on a fun foot. Now I have to move slides. Hang on. There we go. Are you guys still seeing slides? Yep, okay, good. So today we'll talk about what is Safe Routes to School, funding for Safe Routes to School, the construction Safe Routes to School grant program. Then I'll pass it off to Heidi. She'll take over for the education program, and we'll leave about 45 minutes at the end for Q&A, so we can get into any of the specific questions that you might have. So Safe Routes to School, we like to say that Safe Routes to School is a village, and the role that ODOT plays in this village is to provide grants and resources to help communities, school communities, families get kids to school safely. So at ODOT, our vision is that students and families can choose and have access to safe, active, and shared transportation options to and from school. And we do that through our education program that Heidi runs and the construction program that I run. And we do it by prioritizing underserved communities. What we do know is that when the construction side is addressed, as well as the education side, we see about a 45% increase in students walking into school. So that is ODOT's role, the role that ODOT plays in Safe Routes to School here in Oregon. You also might have your local city or county or health department, school district involved. This is a partnership between a lot of different people working to help get our kids to school safely. And the reason why Heidi and I are talking to you today is because of the funding available for Safe Routes to School. So for our education program, we have about $1 million annually. That is federal funded. We also have the Safe Routes to School construction program that is funded at $10 million annually, which is funded through state dollars. And what we do is we pull those two years of those funding together to do a call out every couple of years. So during this call out for applications, we'll have about $26 million in construction funds to allocate through grants, about $3 million in rapid response construction grants, about $750,000 in services for planning assistance, and we'll have about $2 million in education grants and services. So all of that will be accessible through this application process that we're about to tell you about. Also, if you're new to Safe Routes to School, our planning assistance program and our education grants are all really good things to look at to help get you set up for how to create a successful Safe Routes to School program in your school community or in your city or in your county. So some key dates before we get into the construction and education program overviews are that the first date to remember is March 18th. That is when the applications will be due. March 18th is the first deadline for applications. And then for the construction program, we'll have a second deadline of July 31st. And that will be for part 2 of the construction grant application. Those are the main dates to remember. Here's a sort of a more drawn out view of the timeline. February 1st to March 18th, we will open the application for construction, part 1, education, and planning assistance. In April and May, we'll do a review and approval for the planning assistance and the education grants. And then on May 1st through July 31st, application part 2 for the construction grant will open. And then in the fall and winter, we'll have a review and approval process for those construction grants. the application part 1 and part 2 for construction is a bit different than we've done it in the past. And the reason for that is so that you can provide some pretty high level information in part 1 about your construction project that will give you an idea of about 80% of how that project would score in our scoring process. And then what we'll do is we will provide information to everyone who filled out part 1 of what their score would be and how they would fall with everyone else who filled out part 1. It'll help you decide if you want to fill out part 2 or not. We highly recommend that everybody fill out part 2, but that will be a lot more information. So we want you to have an idea of how competitive your part 1 will be before you take the next step and fill out all of part 2. Another change from the last solicitation, another big change from the last solicitation is how we're measuring low-income families. In the past, we've used the percentage of students receiving or eligibility for free and reduced lunch. Since that time, Oregon has decided to allow every student have a free lunch. So that metric no longer works for us to determine which families are low income. So we're using a different data set. So I just wanted to say that out loud. If you've looked at free and reduced lunch percentage in the past, we're not actually using that for this round because it's not going to tell us the same information that we used to learn from it. So we'll have a new data set for you that I will share with you. So jumping into our first my PowerPoint, it just said my PowerPoint stopped working. So I'm going to open that presentation one more time. My apologies. Hopefully this will work. I also got that notice right before this webinar started that my computer is going to shut down in 7 hours and 59 seconds, which is always just like that high anxiety moment. It's like, wait, what? Why are you shutting down? All right, let's see if this opens up. Sorry for the delay here, folks. You can have a few bites of your lunch. There we go. We're gonna jump ahead to here. I might even just do this so we can skip around slides if we need to. All right, so starting with the Planning Assistance Program, also called the Project Identification Program. Again, this is one that's great if you are new to Safe Routes to School. So this program is one of my favorite programs that we have. We get to send a technical assistant to your community to help create a Safe Routes to School plan, working with the road authority, the entity that owns the roads, and the school community to create a project list and prioritize that project list to help address barriers walking and rolling to school, as well as give some suggestions for education programming that you can also do to address those barriers. So what you'll get out of this is a really nice Safe Routes to School plan. What you'll need to do to get this is make sure that the road authority, the entity that owns the roads around the school, and the school community are both on board to, or are both willing to participate in this process. So eligible entities to apply are school districts, publicly funded agencies, cities and counties, transit districts, tribes, any other road authority. What you'll get is that full Safe Routes to School plan, which you'll see some of the pictures onto the side are some of the maps that are included in that plan. We are going to be prioritizing communities that don't have the capacity to plan locally, communities with a big low income population, and communities that the school is surrounded by high crash risk, roads with high crash risk factors. We'll be able to fund about 15 communities or about 30 schools. We just need that confirmation of commitment from the applicant as well as the road authority and the school community. And it takes about a 30-week process to get from start to finish of this program, but you'll walk away with a really nice Safe Routes to School plan that will set you up to apply for more grants in the future. The second program I want to tell you about is our competitive construction program. And I'll go through eligibility, match, project selection, project delivery, and how to apply. So who can apply for the construction grants? Basically anyone who can build on a public road right of way. So that's going to be cities, counties, tribes, transit district, other road authorities. So anybody who has control over that public road can apply for this funding. You'll notice that ODOT's not on this list of who's going to apply this round, and that's because the Oregon Transportation Commission dedicated an additional pot of funding for Safe Routes to School projects on ODOT's right of way. So we've pulled ODOT out of the running for this cycle of funds, and what that'll do is it'll free up more state funds for local communities. Whoops. So here's the list of everything that the project must have in order for you to apply for the Safe Routes to School construction funds. The project must be a pedestrian and bicycle project that is addressing a barrier to students walking and biking to school. It must have the support of the school district. It must be within a 1 mile radius of the school. It must be on a public road right of way. It must meet the local cash match requirement, which I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. It must have a commitment to outreach. So the grantee must agree to put out a press release when their project is done, to provide some safety information for the school community that can go home for kids and families. And we have all of that information and all of those templates that we can provide to you, but that's something that we ask that our grantees commit to. It must be aligned with the publicly adopted plan. If the project is not listed in a publicly adopted plan, that's okay, as long as it's kind of like aligned with the goals and the themes of the publicly adopted plan. And there's a minimum request of $60,000 and a maximum request of $2 million. A little bit more about the local cash match requirement. Cash match is actual funds provided by the applicant that are reasonable, necessary, and directly related to the project. It's good to note that actual funds can be considered up to 5 years prior to the project. So we'll talk about that in a second. But basically, if you built a sidewalk near a school 2 years ago, and now you want to do some safety enhancements for crossing the roadway in that area, you could potentially use that, the cost that you spent on the sidewalk as match for your crossing enhancements that you want to do with a Safe Routes to School grant. So there is a 40% cash match requirement unless you meet the eligibility for the 20% cash match requirement, which most of our most of our applicants actually meet the criteria to be reduced to 20%. So you can reduce that 40% to 20% if any of the following three things apply. If your school is located in a city under 5,000, if your project reduces hazards on a priority safety corridor, and I'll go over what that means in just a second, or if the school site qualifies as a Title I school, which is where 40% or more students are low income. So most of our applicants will meet the criteria in one of these three categories. The priority safety corridor is just a way to describe a corridor or a road that has high risk of crashes. So if your project is on a priority safety corridor, you can also receive that 20% cash match reduction. And how we define that is either the posted speed or 50th percentile is 40 miles an hour, or if two of the following exist. If the speed limit is 30 miles an hour or greater, if you have more than 2 lanes of crossing distance, if there are 12,000 or more average annual daily traffic on that road, or if there's a demonstrated history of crashes related to the school traffic. So if 2 of those 4 things also exist, then it's considered a priority safety corridor. So that's all eligibility for the construction grant funds. Again, we will have 2 parts to the application. Part 1 will be due by March 16th. And that's just going to help us confirm eligibility. You'll have to provide a high-level problem solution and project description. We'll ask you a little bit of safety information that'll help us figure out if there's high risk of crashes, as well as some applicant information and school information. And then in part 2, that will be open May 1st through July 31st. We'll ask you for more project and school specifics. We'll ask you for your cost estimate and your timeline, your cash match information. We'll also ask for maps and photos and support letters and signatures for the application. So part 2 is where we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the application. So once we receive all the applications, this is a process slide that will show you how we get to our final approval list by the Oregon Transportation Commission. So first, all of the application material will come in. The advisory committee has approved a scoring matrix that we'll go over in the next couple of slides, and we'll use that scoring matrix for the applications. We'll also provide, and staff will do a sort of an eligibility review, and that will kind of bring our list down to the 150% list. At that time, we'll do a ground conditions review on the applications, and we might, we'll create some scenarios for our advisory committee that uses some lenses that our advisory committee says that they might want to use to help review the project list. So we'll provide those scenarios to the advisory committee, and that will be in our, I believe our meeting is in November of 2022. And then our advisory committee will review those scenarios, make an ultimate recommendation, and that will go to the Oregon Transportation Commission. Here's a rundown of what that scoring matrix is looking like for the Safe Routes to School construction grants. We'll have about 39% of the score will be determined through transportation disparities factors, and that's mostly the income of the families at the schools. About 3% of the score will be relationship to school, the project's relationship to the school, how close it is to the school. Is it within the attendance boundary? Is it in an area that currently the school is providing hazard busing or supplemental busing? So things along that line will help, will provide a little bit of the scoring. School type will provide 18% of the scoring, and that is where we're prioritizing elementary and middle students. So prioritizing those younger students. And then 24% will be the crash risk factors, which will be things like speed, crossing distance, average annual daily traffic, and history of crashes. All of those things we'll be able to figure out in part 1 of the application. So you'll know about 85% of your score after filling out part 1. In part 2 is where we'll get into more of the details of the project, and that's where we'll figure out, we'll have a score around the readiness. So the second part of the application will provide about 16% of the score, and that will be around like, how far along are you in design, in public process? Is there any environmental issues? Are there any curb and gutter issues? Are there utilities issues that still need to be figured out? So all of that kind of things we'll figure out in part 2, and that'll be about 16% of the score. So, so right now we've walked through the priorities for scoring. Staff also will do like that eligibility review that I told you about, which basically just means that, does the solution match the problem? And we'll take a look at the budget and feel like, does this budget seem reasonable? At that point, if staff has any questions, we'll contact the applicant and we'll let you know what our concerns are, and we'll give everybody a chance to update application materials in order to address any concerns, so we don't pull people out of eligibility without calling them and fixing whatever the issue is or whatever the questions are. And then we provide different scenarios for our advisory committee based on the lenses that they've already talked about using for this process. So these are the 3 lenses that we'll be able to provide scenarios for our advisory committee based on. So the first one is the advisory committee may decide to only allow any one entity to receive $2 million. So for example, if a city puts in 2 applications that both scored very well, and they're both for $2 million, we might only fund one of those applications, so that the maximum amount that any entity can get is $2 million. The second lens that the advisory committee might use is that if there are a bunch of applications right on the cut line that have a similar score, they might decide to choose the new applicant that has never received funding before for Safe Routes to School. And they might try to prioritize persistent applicants. So people who have applied a bunch of times in the past but have not received funding yet. So those might get prioritized right on that cut line. And then the other sort of lens that they can use is that if a bunch of applications all have the same score right on the cut line, they might fund several smaller projects as opposed to one larger project. So the reason for this is so that we can fund more communities with our small pot of safe routes to school funding. So that's their way of kind of getting at that. We have a big state, getting at that geographic balance of trying to spread the funding out just a little bit. A little bit about project delivery is that you must, if you receive funds, you must start spending them within 2 years. The project must be completed within 5 years. These are reimbursement grants, so we reimburse you for eligible expenses. There are quarterly progress reports that are required, and you must incorporate that outreach that we talked about earlier, which is the press release and the safety information to families at the school where you're building the project. A little bit about our rapid response grant program. It has the same eligibility as our construction grant program, but this one you can apply to at any time. This is a rolling, ongoing application process. And there are 2 additional criteria that one needs to be present in order to be eligible for rapid response. One is a timely opportunity, and an example of that is the fires down in Phoenix. So as they're rebuilding after the fires, there was some enhanced pedestrian improvements that we could do that was really timely. And so we were able to help provide funding for those enhanced safety improvements. The second eligibility option is an urgent safety need. And what that means is that, heaven forbid, if a pedestrian or a bicyclist is injured or killed within a 1 mile radius of a school, we can help provide you with quick funds to build something at that location that could potentially help make that location safer. So those are the criteria for our rapid response program, which you can apply for at any time. A couple of tips for your proposals for the construction program or the project identification program I wanted to show you a couple of websites. The first one is OregonSafeRoutes.org, and I am going to come on over to my, can you see a website now on my screen? Yep, okay, excellent. So this is the OregonSafeRoutes.org find funding site. And while I'm in here, I'm gonna pop it in the chat. So you can poke around in there. And I'm gonna click on construction program. And this is where you're gonna find all of your application materials. So we have the guidelines ready to be downloaded. This is where you'll access application part 1 and part 2 when those are online. Your signature pages are located here, as well as a map that we created to help you have all the information that you'll need to fill out some of the application bits. So I'm going to click on the map so you can see what that looks like. And I will provide that link as well, so you can poke around here. So this will be a great site for you to go to find out what is the low income rate of the students at the school. So we've got the map here of Oregon. We can zoom into a school here in Lowell. So it might be a little hard to see on my screen, but it tells you that this school, this Lundy Elementary School, is for kindergartners through 6th grade. It has the % of students in poverty, the % of students who are ever English learners, which are like English as a second language learner, the percentage of students of color, the percentage of students with a disability, the percentage of chronically absent students. So these are some of the information that we'll be asking for in the application. And this is a great one-stop shop for you to be able to come and find everything that you're gonna need. The other thing that you can see in this map are the blue and red dots. So you'll see that there's blue and red dots here. And those are crashes that have resulted in injuries or serious injuries and fatalities. And the final piece of information that you'll see on this map is the Transportation Disadvantaged Index, which are these colors that you see here. And so this is another piece of information that we'll be asking for in the application. So say you want to build a project on this road right here, the Transportation Disadvantaged Index for that area is 1.64. So that'll give you a couple of additional points on your application. So those are some really great, helpful websites to go poke around on. There's also some human resources that we have, which one would be the Safe Routes to School hubs in your area, our technical assistance hubs. We have 3 across the state. That's where our technical assistants meet monthly. They are a great resource for asking questions, getting support, getting advice on what to apply for, how to apply. So our technical assistance team is here to help. We also have regional traffic safety coordinators in each ODOT region. And here's the names of all of those for each region. We also have regional active transportation liaisons in each region in Oregon. So, and here are all of the people in each region for our active transportation liaisons. These are folks internal to ODOT that also are on they're our people. They get it and they want to help communities make things safer for students to walk and roll to school. So these are all great people to know and to connect with. A little bit about meeting the local cash match requirement. The cash match can be met through local, state, or federal funds. One way to meet that cash match requirement is to describe a larger project where funding for only a part of that project is the funding that you're asking for with Safe Routes. So before, the example I provided of you're building a sidewalk by a school, you also want to provide some crossing enhancements. The sidewalk can be, if you describe the larger project in your application, then you can talk about the sidewalk as being the match and the crossing as being the grant funded portion. There's also an Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Bank, which is a way to borrow money at a really low interest rate, and that can be used for cash match. There are also 2 other programs, the Community Development Block Grants for Housing and Urban Development, as well as Community Facility Grants, which is a USDA Rural Development Program. Both of those funding sources can also be used as cash match and can be used to build safety improvements. So that's just some ideas for the cash match. Some project examples. So here are some key design manuals if you're looking for, okay, we know what the problem is, we're not really sure what the solution is. These are all some great options to look into. At the very bottom of the screen, you'll see a countermeasure tool at www.pedbikesafe.org. That's a really interesting learning opportunity to put in some criteria, and it'll tell you what some of the countermeasures are that you might want to consider for that location. In general, this is what we funded. We fund a lot of support for crossing the street. We fund a lot of things that help kids walk along the side of the street. We fund things that slow down traffic. So there are things like marked crosswalks, raised crosswalks, sidewalks, alternative walkways, school zone flashers, speed bumps. These are the bread and butter of the Safe Routes to School program. Just want to note that we don't fund a lot of paving. So we'll fund a little bit of paving if it's required to do whatever curb and gutter that you're doing for your sidewalk. But for this is not the program to fund an entire paving of a road. Let's talk a little bit about bicycling. So one of the best practices for kids is to separate kids and families from traffic. So here are some visual examples of some separated biking facilities. I also want to point out the one resource is the blueprint for urban design that ODOT's created that can also help you determine in any situation, what is some of the safer bike infrastructure to put in that situation? Like, what's the speed? What type of road is it? These types of tools can help you determine what to choose, which bike infrastructure to choose. I wanted to show you a couple of finished projects that we funded with Safe Routes to School funds and that have been completed in the last year or two. Here's a project in Coos Bay that is sidewalks, crosswalks, ADA ramps, rapid flashing beacons. Here's a project in Deschutes County that is sidewalks and curb extensions. Here's a project in Eugene. I like to point this one out because this is an application that Eugene put in with several different locations all over town. They were going to deliver all at the same time or around the same time. And so they put them all into one application and were funded. And they got to do a lot of great projects around town. Speed zone flashers, curb ramps, crosswalks, sidewalks, rapid flashing beacons, pedestrian islands, just really helping a bunch of students all at once get to school safely. Here is a project in Milton Freewater, did some curb ramps and rapid flashing beacons. City of Salem, pedestrian median with 2 flashing beacons put up on Liberty Road. And here's an example of a rapid response project that was funded and is completed in the city of Tillamook. So put in speed tables, sidewalk, curb ramps, street lights. So some of those safety features that they could put in along a corridor by a school. I'm going to pass it over to Heidi to do the next several slides, and then we'll do Q&A.
Thank you, Leanne. Hello, everyone. I noticed on the survey at the beginning, the majority of folks were here for construction side of the program, but I think this will be a good overview for you in thinking about the education side as well. And Leanne and I both strongly encourage, like she mentioned at the beginning of this, the combination of both sides of the program to make a more successful, holistic program for these schools. So if you are interested in doing construction but do not have education, I would think about applying with it in mind that this will be at some point a part of your program, whether it's with your agency or you partnering with someone else to take on the education side. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about application for Safe Routes to School. It includes this holistic view if possible. So today I'm just going over a description of the education grants, the eligibility for applying for the grants, the scoring, how we've worked with the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee to come up with the scoring, and basically everything that we're describing are things that will be made available by the 1st of February on our website that Leanne was showing you. So this is basically a summary of what's to come in terms of the materials for this. Next slide. So just a few plugs that the education program are, the grants that are available are for community grants, doing local education projects. This includes things like funding capacity building for things like a Safe Routes to School coordinator to help coordinate all of these different interests in the community as well as with schools and the city to build some sort of an education campaign for kids, but also for families and school staff and community folks. So resources for this type of programming is available on the website that Leanne directed you to. There's all sorts of free resources available that we've already developed and are developing to give you an idea of some of the work that can be done with the education side. Again, our resource hubs are a good resource for this type of materials. There's hub meetings that you can go to, as well as we have monthly trainings or webinars that you can also do. So if you are new to Safe Routes and you want a little bit more information or want to get involved, we also have a newsletter, and Leanne and I have a listserv through ODOT that you can sign up for as well. So next slide. So in talking about the next round of funding, this goes the dates, application dates are the same. With Leanne, we only have the first part, though. We don't have a part 2 for the education grant. So this application would be due March 18th, along with Leanne's part 1. So this would be funding for the federal fiscal year 2023 and 2024. Next slide. So we have approximately $1 million to allocate to competitive grants. So this would be starting October 1 of this year for the 2023 federal fiscal year. And the grant can go through September 30th of 2024 for the 2024 federal fiscal year. Next slide. So, so this year we're doing a couple things different. One, in the past we've funded a three-year program, and now we're funding at a 2-year program. Also differently, rather than everyone in the state funding for or competing for one bucket of funding, we've worked with the advisory committee to implement this new process of having a 3-tiered program. And the 3 tiers are based off of the how each of the programs, how advanced each of the programs are. So if you're a beginner and have never done education, safe routes to school education programming, you would fall in the tier 1. If you have been working on safe routes to school education programming, but you're not really sustainable, or you've only been going for a couple of years, you're still trying to implement your original goals and need funding to, like, say, keep a coordinator going, you would be in the tier 2. And then the tier 3 are for groups who have been funded quite a bit through ODOT or are sustainable already on their own and are just looking to innovate and do something different or expand in such a way. So I'll be explaining these out a little more as we go through. So the reason for this change is in review over the past couple of grant application cycles, we've seen folks who apply, and when they have never done safe routes to school before, it takes them quite a bit of time to get moving and get going at this. And so their first year is them kind of spinning their wheels trying to recreate a wheel or create a wheel in their community. And so it leaves them without the time to get what they need to get done by the time the grant is over. And so the point of this tier is to be able to offer some assistance to those people who are just beginning off, while also letting them compete within the same bucket of funding as folks that are in the same position as them. And that way we aren't getting folks who already know how to write a great application, already have a program going, and can just get funding over and over again, versus folks who may not have all of those resources. So it's also an equity issue as well as a sustainability issue. So we're trying to use these tiers to see if this will help us make programs more successful. So next. Okay, so this slide kind of shows you the differences between the tiers. So like I mentioned, tier 1 is where folks who are new to safe routes to school or have not had funding in many years. And so what we're doing with this tier is we're offering $150,000 total for the grant, but 50,000 of that would be paying for a consultant to work with you to get you started. So this may be working with you to develop an implementation plan that's like a document that you've worked together on to kind of have a plan of knowing where the coordinator is going to be housed, how the coordinator is going to get hired. If the coordinator is already hired, maybe they just begin starting on that implementation process. So we'll pay the $50,000 for that for 6 months, let's say, of you working with a consultant, and then the rest of the time is spent trying to implement that plan and kind of getting off on your feet. So these are for applicants who have never received ODOT funding before, education funding before, or not since 2014. So the second tier are programs who already are prepared, they're just ready to succeed. So this is where they kind of can start off running from where they already are. So this is ones who already have a coordinator position set up, already have somewhat of a plan, or they're already implementing safe routes. And so this would be $100,000 over those 2 years. And these are for groups who have not been funded with ODOT, but already have a plan and are ready to start on the ground, or haven't been funded for many years. So if you've been funded more than 2 or more times since 2014, then you can't apply for this tier. You would have to only be able to apply for the innovation grant. And so tier 3 would be that innovation grant, and those are for folks who are pretty much sustainable funding wise on their own, or just need that little bit extra to kind of help them expand some more, become more sustainable. So these are for folks who are already sustaining on their own for the most part, but just need that extra help to build an extra leg or complexity into their program. Or who have been funded 2 or more times since 2014. So in terms of the funding, it's 100% federal funds. I'm sorry, 88% federal funds and 12% local match. So this match can be a cash match or an in-kind match, such as volunteer time. Next slide. So who is eligible? Schools, school districts, local government like cities and counties, tribes can apply, and also nonprofit organizations. Next slide. So in terms of the scoring and the priorities for this application, equity plays a huge role in the scoring for this. And this was, we worked with the advisory committee to determine this. So equity plays a huge role in this, and it's very similar in terms of how Leanne is determining equity for her construction grants. Actually, not just very similar, it is the same. It is the same. So also safety, because this comes from safety funds, and this is safe routes to school. Safety is a major priority. So education programming that's focusing on the safety of kids and families and school travel environments. And then also a focus on coordination, communication, and collaboration. So we have a big focus on building up coordinators and encouraging coordinator positions. We see most successful programs with a dedicated coordinator. And then sustainability. So our goal is to try to help all communities who want to do education programming. And so in order for us to do that, we have to be able to get people moving, and it was intended to be seed money. And we know that's difficult to get moving and then keep funding without having us continue to pay for it. But we're not able to help the rest of the state if we continue to fund the same people over and over. So we do encourage the sustainability piece. So this is just a summary of what the scoring is about. Next slide. So just breaking down, each of the tiers are scored differently. And this is mainly because each of the focus for each of the tiers is different. So the tier 1 education plus, the scoring is mainly based off of based off of the transportation disparities index. So 40% of your score as a tier 1 would be where you lie within that scoring index. And this is the same that we will be using for Leanne's construction side. And then 30% would be the need for the program. So this would be a series of questions that we ask you to determine your capacity and what the need for having a consultant would be in your community. And then additionally, some percentage points on your partnerships with other folks. We want to make sure that you're not working in a bubble and that you are working with partners who are going to be able to not only help support your efforts, but also have some sort of skin in the game to help you become sustainable. So a small focus on dedicated staff time, mainly because we want to encourage it. And that's also, we also will need a staff person, at least part-time, to work with the consultant and get you going. So we want to ensure that grantees who are applying for this are going to have a dedicated person to work on this project and be a coordinator. Next slide. So the second tier, like I said, is a little more spread out because there's different priorities that's expected of the folks who are already going. So again, similar, the 40% for the Transportation Disparities Index, and then a little more spread between the additional partners and dedicated staff time. This is where we really require that staff time to be sustainable and to keep your project going. And then also we're looking a little bit more into sustainability, because at this point, this is where you're really, this should be a lot of your focus. Now that you're up and running, your focus should be that sustainability plan, so that you're less likely to need our funding to keep moving forward after this grant. So it's a little more spread out for the education grant without the consultant. Next slide. And then the tier 3 innovation, this one has a smaller, it's not as spread out in terms of the point spread. And mainly this is because the program should already be pretty focused with those partners. They wouldn't be where they're at if they didn't have some resources and partners. So we're mainly focused on what is your plan for sustainability with your innovation. How does your innovation help create equitable access? How are you going to be more sustainable with this innovation? So those are the kinds of things we're looking for with that tier. Next slide. So this is not an exhaustive list, but this just gives some examples, especially people who are new to Safe Routes may not really, besides funding a coordinator, what are the kinds of things you can fund with this, with these grants? You can certainly fund some training for staff at schools, for city, county, anyone that's working with students, or transportation, bicycle and pedestrian safety education. You can do all sorts of types of training for teachers working in health or PE classes. So this also could be crossing guard equipment and training. You could build a type of crossing guard program at your school. Also, we can fund overtime law enforcement or the equipment that they need for that. Bicycle and pedestrian safety curricula. So if you wanted to make your own custom curriculum for maybe an after school program, let's say. Also, this would include paying things like materials and trainers, also paying for substitute teachers in order for your permanent position teachers to have some training. We could also pay for gathering data and doing some kind of analysis or evaluation of your program. This could be things using software, and creation and reproduction of promotional items and printing. So you can make brochures and banners and all sorts of things for your events, education for, let's say, a pickup and drop off area for a school. So this list isn't exhaustive, but it's just some ideas of things that the grants can fund. Next slide. And again, not exhaustive, but these are some of the major funding items that are not able, that we're not able to fund. We cannot pay for childcare at this time. It's just a federal requirement that we is still valid. paid media such as commercial advertising or space time. So you can do some kind of messaging and create messaging, but we just can't pay for the media for you to do that. Cash prizes, vouchers, things like gift certificates cannot be used with federal funds. Buying furniture to furnish your facility. We can do things like supplying with like a computer for the coordinator to do their work. These things are tracked. And so we, as equipment, and so there are some things that we can purchase for the life of the grant. We cannot pay for lobbying or time spent lobbying. Infrastructure projects, so any kind of permanent projects, that we leave that to Leanne. And then any kind of supplanting of federal funds for wages. So that's it. My name is Heidi Manlove. I'm happy if you want to email me to set up a meeting or chat with you. Otherwise, you can also contact your hub representative, and also come to some of the hub meetings and talk to folks who may be also applying as well. So I'll leave that and move to Leanne.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks everyone for bearing with us. This is a lot of information to go over. I wanted to provide a couple of more online opportunities for you to get support as you are filling out your application. So we do have one more workshop tomorrow where Heidi and I will go over kind of high level these slides, but then have a lot more time for questions and answers. That is for the Eastern, Southern, Central Oregon Safe Routes to School Hub, but anyone is welcome to it. Also, we are Heidi and I are hosting program manager office hours during the time that the applications will be open. So we will have 4 office hours, about 1 every other week during that time, and it'll be a Zoom call that you can log into and ask us all kinds of questions. I wanted to give you a heads up about a future funding opportunity. If you haven't had enough of information about funding opportunities, ODOT also has a program called the Oregon Community Paths Program. And that solicitation will be open at the end of 2022. So start keeping an eye out for that around August of 2022. And that program will also be a good way for you to apply for funds to build paths, not on the public road right of way. So the Safe Routes to School funds that we have are for the public road right of way. But if you want to go off of that, which oftentimes is a great way for kids to get to school, is off of a path of some kind. There will be a funding opportunity for that at the end of this calendar year. And for those of you who did sort of play along with what is Harry Potter's favorite mode of transportation, we had a couple of guests of brooms, which is an excellent guess, but it's actually more of a pun. And so his favorite form of transportation is walking, JK, rolling. So I got Heidi with that one. I got a couple people with that one. Okay, so JK Rowling is the woman who wrote Harry Potter. Time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Stop share. I like we got a groan on that one. It was really good. And I'm going to see if Emily or Hannah can help facilitate the questions.
I have the questions pulled up too, Leanne, if that's helpful.
Yeah, or Nora. Yeah, Nora.
Yeah. So yeah, I just scrolled back to the first question, and then we'll just roll through in order if that works. So the first question may be specific to Bernadette's situation, but it's about if the roadway is the boundary between 2 transportation disadvantage index areas, how do you select the TDI?
Very good question. We lean towards the higher scoring of the 2. So if you're right on a boundary and there's a higher scoring one, choose that for your answer.
Cool. And then how is the transportation disadvantaged index rated?
Can I have whoever wrote that question unmute and say it, just say it again in different words?
Yes, it's Janice. Hi,
Oh, hi,
Leanne.
Janice. Hi.
What is the criteria or what makes up that index?
Very good question. And I will actually provide more information about this in a follow-up email because it's not currently all in my brain at one time. And it would take me a second to find the details. But basically, the Transportation Disadvantaged Index was a number created through the Active Transportation Needs Inventory, which is a tool that ODOT uses internally to prioritize projects on ODOT right-of-way. And the Transportation Disadvantaged Index is a combination of income, destinations, whether the census block is an area that doesn't have a lot of personal vehicles at home. It's kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different metrics that we can get through census data that would give us an idea this is sort of a transportation disadvantaged area. And I'll provide you with some more exactly what that calculation is in a follow-up email. But we presented it to the Safe Routes Advisory Committee as a metric that some other programs are using to help prioritize projects. And so they wanted to use that index as well for just a smaller part of the Safe Routes to School to kind of be consistent with other ODOT programs. Safe Routes is a little bit different because we do have that school data, the school income data that tells us a lot. So the school income data will be like a maximum of 160 points for your application, and the Transportation Disadvantaged Index will be a maximum of 15 points for your application, just to give you an idea of how heavily that's weighed in that process. But I will follow up with an email from this webinar with a more detailed description of what's actually in the Transportation Disadvantaged Index, if that's okay. I apologize, it's a complicated equation that I don't know off the top of my head.
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Leanne.
Yeah, great question.
I see that Anthony has his hand up. Anthony, do you want to jump in right now?
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. So I'm with the city of Salem, and we applied for and received funding for 3 projects 2 years ago at the last solicitation. Those projects haven't been constructed yet. Will that impact our ability to solicit funds for this round?
Only in one in one potential scenario. So remember when I talked about those lenses that the advisory committee may use in order to spread the funding out a little bit more?
Yeah.
If the city of Salem is really close in score with another application and it's right on the cut line, the advisory committee may choose to fund someone who hasn't been funded before instead. So there is a slight chance, but I would say
it's sort of like a tiebreaker, I guess.
Yeah, it's a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
It's a
Got it.
tiebreaker.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Good to hear your voice, Anthony.
All right, so the next question is a clarifying question about the timeline of the funding for the education grants. So it says, just to clarify, we would know if we were awarded an ed grant in May, but we wouldn't be able to access the funds until October. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. The grant year starts October 1, and so no work the funding contracting will happen over the summer after you're notified, but the actual grant will not pay for anything any kind of programming prior to October 1.
And we did that a little bit on purpose because it does sometimes take a while to get the paperwork filled out for the grants. So it'll give you new grantees a couple of months to get that figured out before the funding starts.
Yeah, funding cycle, we found out in August, September, that grants were starting in October. That gave us 1 month to roll in all these new grantees. So this time we have a little bit more of the summer to really work with grantees on this process and what we need to get moving. So.
Great, thanks. And Valerie, I see you have a hand up too, so why don't you jump in now as well?
Okay.
I think you just muted yourself again. We heard you for a second. Try hitting unmute.
You're still
again.
muted.
We see you, but we can't hear you.
I know that I hit
There
the wrong
you
button.
go.
Okay. Anyway, so I have a couple questions. One of the questions is we of course are in the process of doing one of our schools in the construction grant. And I know that is that's rolling, it's moving forward. And we also got a grant with Alta to put together the master plan for the rest of the schools in our district. But that grant, that master plan is not all complete yet. Can we go forward in this round for the rest of the district, or do we need to wait until we get the master plan completely finished?
Valerie, are you talking about moving forward with an education?
No, my first question is with the construction part of it. And then that's the second part of my question, because I really don't even know where that stands right now. But I do want to know where that one stands, because I don't want the education one to die, but I need to know where it stands and what I would need to kind of help it kick off the ground, because the district has been very, they've had so many issues that I just don't think they've been able to deal with it. And I would need to get a support plan for them. So first question is on the construction side. If our master plan is not complete, can we still move forward this session to put the construction in?
Yes, you don't need to have a completed safe routes to school plan in order to have some projects already identified. The one criteria is that a project that you apply for must be either in a plan or alluded in a plan. And if you have, so that's loose. So you don't specifically have to have a safe routes to school plan completed. Feel free
Good.
and apply for the construction projects.
Okay, that's great, because I'm still out there dealing with principals, but I did want to ask where the school district education plan, whether that was just taken off the docket, whether it was just hibernating, or whether it would take a whole new process to get the education grant going for the Grants Pass School District.
Yeah, Valerie, I'm happy to actually meet with you outside of this, because I feel like I don't want to air other laundry.
Yes. Okay, and that's fine. I actually took down your email address to do that. So I was going to do that part offline.
I'd rather chat with you outside, but they are eligible to still, the grant has never been signed. So they are eligible to still sign it. They only would have the funding for the end of this cycle. And so that's, if they can get it together to start and want to start, fine. If not, I would encourage them to apply for the tier 1.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I will email you because I would like to talk to you about it. Okay,
sure.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay.
If I may jump in on behalf of the PIP team, the planning assistance team. I know there's a lot of folks on the call who are currently active PIP communities. The intent is that we'd have all of your plans done by the second deadline, so that you'd have your full plan sort of in compliance with the grant. And then we'd have enough information for you to do the first part of the application as Leanne described it.
Okay, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Dana.
Okay, we got some more questions in the chat. So the next one is, what's the typical amount of time a coordinator would need to dedicate? So Heidi.
Depending on what tier, I'm guessing they would end up being in the tier 1 if they're asking that. So the kind of time, I say at the very least, we need a part-time coordinator or someone part-time that can work with the consultant. But it just kind of depends on the breadth of the project, what all you're looking to accomplish, how big of a, how many schools you're trying to cover. I mean, it varies. We just need someone to have dedicated hours. What we don't want is for a grant to be determined for your community and then there's no bandwidth or capacity to get the to coordinate the work or get anything done. And so I would say at the very least, maybe 20 hours a week, if possible. That would be my recommendation.
And another question in here from Janice about if you were able to get an answer regarding federal funding being used to work with high schoolers.
Thanks, Janice. Yeah, I did get your email. I haven't replied back. I'm still kind of waiting for some answers on that. What I do know is, okay, so for folks that don't know, generally speaking, education funding has only been for K through 8 up until this new IIJA bill that was just passed, allowing for projects K through 12. I'm thinking that it might be immediately, but we haven't gotten the firm response that it would be involving this round of funding allocated. So I just need to make sure of that before we say that. I'm hoping to have that answer before we put the materials out on the 1st. So right now it is only K through 8 with the caveat that we're still finding out. All of this just went through and it's kind of slow to get those kinds of answers. So what I would suggest is to maybe have a back plan of if you're wanting to include K through 12, have that as a back plan, but know that you may be just applying at this point for K through 8.
Okay. So just a couple more in here. So if you didn't submit a question, you still have one. Now is your time to put it in the chat or raise your hand. Bernadette is wondering when construction grantees can start using the funding.
Great question. We will have our start the contracting. Basically, when the contracts are signed and executed is when you can start being reimbursed for funds. So in general, if we probably the earliest would be March 2023. We should be able to start getting contracts out the door by January, and most contracts will be signed between March and June of 2023. Great question.
And Chris has a question here. Is the new construction grant application online? I'm not sure if Chris means just the construction grant or something different with the new in there. Chris, if you need to clarify your question, you can, but Leanne, it is online, right?
Yes, so I'm sharing my screen again really quickly, because right now, if you click on part 1, this is what you'll get. You'll get our, hey, it'll be open February 1st. However, if you look down here to where it says application worksheet, this is a Word document that I created for you so that you can kind of start working on it in advance. Sometimes it's hard to work on an online application, especially if you're trying to share it with other people to fill out parts. So if you open that Word document, it will basically have all of the questions in there that you can start looking at and filling out. There might be some slight changes that we make to the online form, but nothing major. Like if anything, it'll be like fixing a spelling error or something like that. but that will be a tool that you can use. I'm hoping to get a worksheet like this up for the planning assistance, the project identification program as well. I just don't have it up yet. So, so look for that by the end of this month.
And Chris is wondering if you can add a link to that part of the website to the chat box if you have it pulled up.
Easy. So Chris, this is the page where I got the worksheet, and I'll go ahead and copy the link address to the worksheet as well. That should work. Okay.
Wonderful. All right, so can construction be for projects that allow grade schoolers to get safely to an after school program?
Yeah, so any project within a 1 mile radius of the school that is a priority for the school community works for me. So there is there's an opportunity to get a couple of additional points if the project is really close to the school. So if you're within that sort of like 1/4 mile of the school, you'll get an additional points. But if the project is important to the school community and it's helping kids get around within that 1 mile radius, it's eligible for that program.
Okay, next question here is from Sarah about can we see scores for past applications? She's interested in knowing whether it's worth applying again for a project that didn't get funded in the past on the construction side.
Yeah, send me an email and I can share the scoring breakdown for past applications. Happy to do that. Here's what I would recommend. I would still recommend filling out a application part 1 for any project that you're thinking of. And the reason why is because all of the applications that we got last time were all valid projects, very good projects. We just can't fund them all, so we have to narrow it down some way. So we will have, kind of marked off the list some of those additional high need locations, which means we should be able to go farther down the list this time. So the projects that didn't get funded aren't because they're not needed. It's just because we don't have enough money to fund all of them. So I would recommend still filling out an application part 1 for this round, and that will help me be able to provide you with information like that says in this round, this project compared to all the other projects applied in this round should compete really well. So that would be my recommendation, although I am absolutely happy to provide you with how former applications scored. And the scoring is fairly similar. Like there's some tweaks, but it's fairly similar this time.
And the next question is there an application worksheet also for the education grant?
Sorry, what do you mean application sheet?
So Leanne just shared an application worksheet that's basically like you can fill out the application before it's actually available just to kind of get yourself organized. Does that exist for the education grant as well?
No. We're still working on the application itself and tweaking it for some of the questions being asked. So we don't have that. The application will be up on the 1st. That's the best I can answer right now.
Yeah, we're sort of what is it called? We're like when the train's already rolling. We're like we're working as we're going, and so some of the things we have created and some of the things we don't yet. But by February 1st, we should have all of the materials up and ready to go. Great question.
And also too, I'll say a number of folks who have applied previously, this application is completely different for the education. We're doing it online with the same software as Leanne's. And so the application is a series of questions rather than you filling out the hard copy of the application. So it'll be a little bit easier to complete in that it's less long-term planning of the grant and more about just explaining your situation and need and some of the questions that get us to the scoring. So it's not as much of trying to plan out your objectives and 2 years of budgets and all sorts of things like that. It's a little more streamlined this time around, I would say.
And it looks like that's all the questions in the chat box. Megan's question got answered by Hannah. So yeah, that was all the questions that came through.
Well, we have 9 more minutes. If anybody has anything else.
Or Leanne's gonna tell more jokes.
Dude, I tried to come up with jokes this morning. I was not in. I had 0 jokes. 0 jokes. If anyone else has any jokes.
I just laugh at you. I don't have any either.
No, 0 jokes. And transportation themed jokes too. It was like blowing my mind. I was like, I don't have any.
Yeah. We need a good pot of jokes to go to dig through. Well, I just want to say I appreciate the interest and everyone, especially the technical assistance team, putting this together. And I know we've made quite a bit of changes, especially to the education program. So anything we can do to make the experience easier for you in applying, we will attempt to do. So I appreciate it.